hear you on YouTube. I always like to make sure people can see themselves. You're good. You were good. Yep, we can send it to you. Yep. I'm gonna try to get all three. Here it's. Yeah, that's
Can you see it over my shoulder again?
all right.
That's an actual rendering of her size and height.
Wonderful. All right, we are live. Good morning, everybody. We are live from the Harriet Tubman. I want to make sure I get the name correct. The Harriet Tubman Museum and Educational Center here in Cambridge, Maryland. I had the esteemed opportunity to do some searching, again, aligned with our theme, The Search, to find the local historians as well as the caretakers of information about Harriet Tubman. I am a native Marylander, so Harriet Tubman's history and the ways in which we tell the story of Harriet and all the wonderful things that she has accomplished in her life was very important to me as I searched for more information on Harriet. And even this morning, just spending about an hour and a half with Miss Harris, I learned so much more information about who Harriet is, her impact on the founding of our nation, and her continued sustained history that will be told hopefully for centuries to come. So I have the opportunity this morning to welcome Ms. Harris to our live feed, to welcome you all as we really dig into Ms. Harris's perspective on Harriet, who she believes Harriet is, and all the wonderful things that she knows as a local keeper of knowledge on Harriet Tubman. So welcome, Ms. Harris. We are live. We have about 31 educators from around the nation who are here to learn from you and to really just have a conversation about the search for Harriet Tubman. So I'm going to start with my first question, which is, what was it like to search for Harriet Tubman? How did you get to the place where you are now?
Sure. Well, it was 2020. I'm not an historian by trade, but by passion. In 2020, as you know, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and many others were killed. And watching them change my perspective of who I was in America. And I thought about Harriet Tubman. My father gave me a book when I was 10 years old about her, and I started reading it the night I watched the coverage. And I needed to find my freedom. I felt as if my freedom had been taken away. So in 2020, I was reacquainted with Harriet Tubman, decided to come to Cambridge. I live in the DC area, to talk with local historians to find out about her. And I learned about her by walking with her as I embarked upon a 156-mile journey from Cambridge, Maryland to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And I became acquainted, and she and I now have a very personal relationship.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit about the museum, its founding, and just the history that sits where we're sitting right now?
Sure. So we're at 424 Ray Street in Cambridge, Maryland. This building that the museum is housed in was formerly owned by the Bailey family, and they were huge slave owners in Dorchester County. So we feel it's some vindication to be in this building. It was purchased 50 years ago by a group called the Harriet Tubman Organization, who, growing up, didn't even know Harriet Tubman was born in Dorchester County. And they thought that the city and the children and the people of Dorchester County needed to know about this superhero, Harriet Tubman, that was their brother and sister, their ancestor. So they got a small amount of funds together, purchased this building, and we sit in it now. It's been here for 50 years. We celebrated our 50th year in March. So it's this museum is a keeper of artifacts, pictures, storyboards, books, tapes, videos about Harriet Tubman, and we're very proud to talk about her. When you come here, we will give you the real history with great passion and zeal. And I'm not sure you get that anyplace else.
Absolutely. Just a great segue into my next question. How do you believe Harriet has shaped our understanding of women in general, but really women during chattel slavery?
Well, Harriet Tubman was a superhero. And those of us, I always tell people who come here, I'm exceedingly proud to be the ancestors of resilient women who endured slavery. And because of their sacrifice, I'm here, and we're here. So it's, when I think about it and read about slavery and what we endured, as I said, we were strong and resilient, and we need to, in 2022, continue to draw from that great strength. And if we do that, all the things that we aspire to do are attainable because we are on the shoulders of those before us who did amazing things.
Absolutely. So, as a researcher and historian and really curator of Harriet Tubman's life, what was the most, I guess, rewarding discovery that you found as you searched for her for you?
Well, I think the most astonishing thing about Tubman is she was a woman, she married twice, never had children. And I think about how she represents the modern woman, that most of us work very hard and we toil and we suffer and we sacrifice for everyone else other than ourselves. And I just think about what she had to deal with, being an enslaved woman and then deciding to find freedom and how difficult that must have been without a support system in place. So what I get from her every day is to be strong and resilient in spite of the obstacles that we have to face in life.
Absolutely. So, when you think about her trips and travels, can you clear some things up with some of the discriminant information that is different in one place and says one thing in one place and says something else in another? Can you talk to us about Harriet's actual trips and some of the numbers of individuals she impacted?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Harriet Tubman's legacy has been usurped. Many people write about her, but not everyone knows the real story. So the important thing about being right here in Dorchester County, this is where she was born. So we now have the ability to get the real history. And currently, there's an active archaeological dig in Cambridge in Dorchester County. We have found the foundation of Ben Ross's house, and we know a lot more. People are coming and really getting the history. And many of the books that I've read, and the movies that I've watched, and the documentaries, the information is not quite accurate. Harriet Tubman was born here March 15th, 1822, in a place called Madison, which is about 20 miles from downtown Cambridge. She was enslaved here for 25 years. In 1849, she decides to walk to freedom. Her first night out, she walks 11 miles. Now, Harriet Tubman walks along the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad is a system of people, places, and codes. And it didn't originate here. It originated in Tennessee, actually. But what's unique about Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, and the reason we know about this location between Maryland and all the way north to Canada, is that Harriet Tubman came back 13 times. There are many references that will show 19, 17. It was 13 times she came back. She orchestrated the freedom of 70 people that actually walked the Underground Railroad with her. Then she assisted 70 more with navigating different routes. Now, keep in mind the routes were different. It was a covert operation, so she helped orchestrate that. The 300 that you may read about in various sources were the 300 African American soldiers that she helped emancipate during her work as the only woman. She served in the Civil War and lead a brigade against the raid at the Combahee River in South Carolina. So I just want to make certain of those facts. So it's 70 people and 13 times, as opposed to some of the numbers you'll see.
Absolutely. And I know you talked about the archaeological discovery, because this week we're going over a concept called mapping the search. So that's why we're here in the physical space in Dorchester County to really map the search for Harriet Tubman. So when you think about the Ben's 10 dig that's still ongoing, because I know they're still learning things. Can you talk to us about the cradle that they found? I know they found a cradle, the Bible, and some other pieces. Can you tell me some things that you know about the things that they found so far?
Well, I was, one of the lovely things about being here is that I get called and to come and go with, on this dig with us, because I've actually walked many of the trails. Harriet Tubman was born in a place called Madison, as I said, on Harrisville Road. And so I got to go there. And I saw the dig, and I saw the things that they're uncovering. So I'm sorry, what the question?
So some of the things that they have excavated, have you
Yeah.
seen, and just your experiences at the site?
Oh yeah, I've seen the cradle. The cradle was built from the sweet gum tree. Sweet gum tree is an indigenous tree to Maryland, and so it's a porous tree, and it was used also to make boats. So I've witnessed that. Some of the coins that they found, some of the pieces of dishes that they used. What they're finding is that slavery wasn't as here in these slave cabins, if you will, or in their houses. They actually had plates and dishes and those kinds of things. So we're finding those in the dig. So that was very exciting and sort of an eye opener into life as a slave here in Maryland, as opposed to being in the southern states. So it's very exciting. It's ongoing, and I look forward. I get to go back this month, actually, in August, I'm sorry, to see there. It's an active dig, and we'll see more.
How do you use history as a historian to convey the hope in resistance when you think about Harriet Tubman? So how do you convey that hope, or how do you see it, Harriet Tubman's story as
Sure. So when folks come here, we know that Harriet Tubman was enslaved in the state of Maryland. I like to focus on the things that she does after she becomes free. I take the word freedom and I use it as an acronym. I want people to understand that freedom means freedom of the mind, freedom of movement. And if we embrace those on an everyday basis, then we'll understand and we're able to reach our goals. So I take the word F as freedom, R as release, E everlasting, everyone to be daring, to be obliging, and to march on. So I want people to know that you can be enslaved in a situation in your mind, and if you are able to embrace freedom to move forward, then you'll get where you need to be. You'll reach the successes in life, which is what Harriet Tubman did. She walks here, she puts one foot in front of the other. She walks from the Burris Plantation to freedom in Pennsylvania. And she goes on to do some amazing things that she should not have been able to do, but she was able to do them because she embraced freedom and what it meant, and that she was not going to be enslaved or disabled by a previous condition. So it's what you do when you become free that I like to espouse. So Harriet Tubman goes on to, she works in the Civil War. She helped Susan B. Anthony orchestrate the women's movement. Women get their right to vote in 1920. She dies in 1913, but that didn't happen without her help. She assists John Brown, the raid on Harper's Ferry. And then in her later years, she goes to Albany, New York, she becomes a businesswoman, for goodness sake. A politician, she knows she's got a network of people. She knows how to navigate places and locations and work a network of people. And she opens up a house to assist the elderly, to assist the poor. So she's just a phenomenal human being, not just a woman, but a human being. And if we all do just a fraction of what she does in life, just imagine how we will advance our culture and our people.
Thank you. I know we're here in Dorchester. Can you tell us a little bit about Harriet's family legacy on a local level? Does she still have family here?
Oh, absolutely. The Ross, Harriet Tubman she changed her name after she found freedom, but she was born Araminta Ross. Ben Ross was her father. And the Rosses are here. They're still here. The direct descendants of Harriet Tubman and her brothers are here, indeed. When she moves to, and then we have some Stewarts. When she goes north, the brothers change their name to Stewart. So the families, they're here, indeed.
So our project is named The Search for Founding Black Mothers. So as a researcher, historian, and again, caretaker of information, who are your founding Black mothers?
Well, there are many women that we've read about, very famous women who do extraordinary things. But I'm drawn to the unsung heroes, to people who have touched my life, and I'm sure many of your lives, that help shape you. I believe that we are all born with a purpose, and it's that one person along your journey in life that may touch you to make certain that you stay on route to your purpose. So I think about my mother, who was an extraordinary woman. I think about my auntie, who was the first person to take me to a museum. I think about the lady when I was downtown on a bus once and didn't have a bus fare to get on the bus, and she gave me money to help me to get on my journey. So I focus on the unsung heroes, those that shape us at a very young age to help us realize our potentiality. We can Google all the great leaders, but we can't Google the unsung heroes because more often than not, we don't remember their names. So those are the people that I focus on, men and women in my community that help shape me and that have helped shape you. And these are the people that we need to think about and remember in our journey in life.
Absolutely. We know 2022 is an exciting year. You mentioned March 15th was Harriet's 200th birthday. So we are in the 200th year celebration. Can you tell us how you have celebrated the 200 and really some of the things that should be happening nationwide?
Sure. Well, we got to acknowledge Harriet Tubman. She was a superhero. And I don't know of any, when you talk about all the great women, there have been many, I just don't know anyone that quite measures up to Harriet Tubman, given she was born in 1822 and did some extraordinary things, the greatest of which is helping other people. So here in Cambridge, here in Dorchester County, we are celebrating Harriet Tubman. There are two museums here. We are the Harriet Tubman Museum and Educational Center. We have the National Byway in Church Creek, about 10 miles from where she was born. We've had a host of programs. But what I choose to do here, and there are two of us here, again, I'm Linda Harris, we have William Jarman. We make history come alive. When you come here, I will take you to locations where Harriet Tubman walked. I'll take you to the two plantations that she was enslaved on, the walks between them, and we give you a walking history. I will take you past the courthouse where she rescues her niece, Keziah, in this most daring, ingenious endeavor. I'll take you to Long Wharf, where the slave ships came in. They stopped coming to the United States in 1808, but I'll take you to where some of the last ones came. And so it's a history that you can experience. It's a touch, feel kind of history. Coupled with the lectures, we have old documents that really make Harriet Tubman come alive, and I'm not sure you can get them anyplace else. We have a lot of donors, and again, because of the archaeological dig, more information is being found, and we become the keepers of those documents. So we're very proud to share that information and give you the little unknown facts about Harriet Tubman that when you leave here, you're impacted, and I hope changed by what you learned.
Great. It's actually, again, a good segue into my next question. What are some of the critical things you want educators to know about teaching Harriet, her legacy, and really her current impact?
Well, Harriet, she's a superhero. And if you take, so I have coined a phrase, find the Harriet in you. Mm-hmm. If you take one aspect of what she did and embrace it, it will change you forever. She was a humanitarian. She was a politician. She was a fighter. She was a nurse. She was a keeper of freedom and what it represented. So I think that when we think about Harriet as a great American, as an African American woman, the strength, the resilience, the perseverance, those virtues are what we need to be successful. And she espouses all of those things. So let's we know that she was enslaved, but what she did after slavery and how she impacted this world and the country is something that we can all identify with. And again, we take one aspect of the things that she did, just one. Think about being a humanitarian, caring for your community, caring for the elderly. If you do those things, it makes the world a better place. And that's what it's sorely needed right now in this country.
Absolutely. Can you tell them a little bit about the statue unveiling that's happening a little bit later this year?
Absolutely. So it's September 10, 11, 12, that second weekend in September, we're going to have the unveiling of a permanent statue of Harriet Tubman here in Cambridge. It's going to be placed in front of the courthouse where Harriet Tubman's grandmother in the mid-1750s, Modesty Green, was actually marched down from a slave ship and sold. So it's very symbolic. It's our Day of Resilience. This will be the third annual Day of Resilience. So there will be a ton of activities. The unveiling, of course, being the most pivotal part of the program. It's a 3-day event, so there'll be shows, there'll be demonstrations, and speakers, lectures. So it's going to be a great activity that they'll have, and most of it will take place very near the museum.
Great. So what is your perspective on the $20 Harriet, the legislation that was presented to place Harriet on the $20 bill? I guess we can talk about the excitement I'm sure that you had around it, its relevance, and then your perspective on maybe why it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, sure. So Andrew Jackson, we don't focus on him, has been on the $20 bill since 1928. And we're not even sure why he's there. You know, the $20 bill is the most circulated currency in the United States, or throughout the world, actually. And I read that the money is what the United States believes in their almighty dollar. So this $20 bill is circulating, and we want to have someone on that $20 bill that represents who we are. And the early settlers came here to be free, and who exemplifies freedom more than Harriet Tubman? Now, it was promised to us that she'd be on this bill in 2020. It's now been extended to 2030. And I don't, unless there's new information, we had a recent couple, I think early in the year, we had a discussion. There's a Network to Freedom, and we had a discussion with our congressional folks. And there's delay after delay after delay. The $20 bill apparently is the one bill that is most counterfeited in this country. And they're saying for security reasons, there has to be extra measures put into making this switch and changing the face on the $20 bill. I think it's all very political. I don't know what goes into making currency in this country, but I do know that the technology is probably there, and this could happen. But I think it's political. I think with all that's going on in the country, this critical race theory, this whole movement, if you will, to sort of erase history, as it were, is just all part of the delays in putting Harriet Tubman on the $20 bill for a couple of reasons. An enslaved African-American woman who has not been, or probably in the minds of many, should not be the representative of this country and put on our currency. So I think it's a lot of politics that go into the delay, and I don't think it's necessary. I think it can happen, and it should happen, and it should have happened in 2020. But as I said, I'm told it's 2030. I don't know if there's any new information out there. But what in the world is going to happen by 2030? We're going to have a whole new administration, and there could be more delays. So I think it behooves all of us who want to see Harriet on the $20 bill to call your congressperson, and let's start making demands. Let's get some petitions going. Yeah, I think it can happen now.
Absolutely. We've been doing a lot of research on Black women, and particularly their likeness, and this memorialization of their likeness in history. Can you talk to us a little bit about, in your travels and experiences, the ways that Harriet is depicted in photograph and in paint, and I know we're going to walk the museum in a second to see
Sure.
some renderings, and really this new unveiling of her likeness, and just the ways that you've seen that evolve over time.
Oh, sure. So, I mean, seeing pictures as Harriet Tubman as a little girl, I mean, she was always this old woman looking pretty bad, you know, scarred up, beat up, old. Harriet Tubman was a young woman. You know, she was born into slavery, and she was a young, you know, woman who had dreams and goals like all of us. And so why she's depicted as she's always looking very angry in these pictures. I would think that once she found freedom, and this is probably when she was photographed the most, she would have been freed up and lighthearted and had a pleasing image. But that's not the images we see. It's evolving because we have to make the demand that evolve and represent who she was. And I believe if your heart is free, if your mind is free, then you emanate a sort of glow that should be depicted in these photographs. And they just have not been. But it's changing as things are changing, and we're glad for that. I'm glad for that change. I'm sure that we all are.
Absolutely. So I guess we can transition to, I guess, talking about things that are here in the museum and getting our teachers kind of familiar with some of the artwork and artifacts that sit here at the museum. So
Okay, sure.
we will follow you.
Okay, well, great. We'll give you a little tour of our museum. This museum is 50 years old this year, if I didn't already mention it, and it was created by African Americans 50 years ago who were not learning about Harriet Tubman. They weren't teaching her in school, and many of them didn't even know that she was born in Dorchester County, just about 20 miles from the location of our museum. So we're small. We depend on donations and the sale of our T-shirts and merchandise to keep our doors open. So we don't have a big budget, but I'm working on that. I'm trying to get some funding and write some grants. But why don't you come with me? When you come into our museum, and all the things that we have been donated to us. We have this storyboard that chronicles Harriet Tubman's life, so you can read about the harsh resisting slavery, about Harriet Tubman crossing the line, and then her life as an American hero. So we have this storyboard. This statue, if you will, and I'll give you an explanation. This statue, the large, this is a rendering, but the large statue is actually at the front of Salisbury State University.
Wow.
And this was donated to us by the sculptor. It is Harriet Tubman, and I want you to just think about the image that you see here. Harriet Tubman is saying, "Come with me. I am going to take you to freedom." On her shoulder, she's got the barred owl. The significance of that owl is, the owl is a nocturnal creature, as you know. Harriet Tubman had to travel at night. She followed the North Star. She followed Polaris. It's the base of the Little Dipper where the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper meet. So when she was about to approach, her name was her nickname, if you will, or her honored name, if you will, was Moses. So when the enslaved people got word that Moses was coming, she would often use the sound of the barred owl, and that's ooh, ooh. So imagine at night you hear the owls. No one can think that it's a person calling out. So she was very, very crafty, very, very skillful. At the bottom of the statue, you see a rabbit, lots of rabbits in Maryland, lots of rabbits all over Dorchester County. She had the swiftness of the rabbit, which meant when she came, you had to pick up whatever you had with you, and you had to move quickly. So that we love this statue, and we love how it depicts her. If you look at her image, it's not she looks like a younger woman. I mean, her head is wrapped as it would have been. But she's got a determined look on her face that she is not only carrying her will for freedom, but her will to lead you to freedom. And we love that about the statue. As we go through, now we've got a couple of quilts, and I want to dispel, and folks get angry with me about the quilts, I want to dispel some of the myths about the quilts. Now, I was in South Carolina recently, and I followed her trail to the Combahee River raid. The South, they used the quilts, and it is believed that the quilts were used as symbols along the Underground Railroad. There's no academic knowledge really to back that up. But what we have here is a host of quilts. We've got a couple of them that were given to us. The Quakers used the quilts, and these were given to us by various Quaker organizations. But we don't have them here because they represent any symbol along the Underground Railroad or symbols used. But these are donations, and we very prominently and proudly display them. Okay, continue. Mm-hmm. This is our little, this is our store. It's a little junky right now.
It's busy.
It's busy because we sell. So let me just tell you, in this little museum, we're open Thursday, Friday, Saturday, from 12 to 3, Thursday, Friday, and 12 to 4 on Saturday. It is not unusual for us to have as many as 1,000 people in those 3 days.
Wow.
I am astounded by the number of people that come to our museum. It is wonderful. There are just 2 of us working here, so by the end of the day, I'm exhausted. But we sell our t-shirts. Can I display them?
Absolutely.
We sell 2 kinds of t-shirts. Well, actually 3. On the side of our building is the mural, Take My Hand. And we sell this t-shirt. This is our biggest seller. As I said, it's called Take My Hand. It's either take my hand to where I'm going, or let me take you back to where I've been. So this is our biggest seller. And it's the sell of these t-shirts and merchandise that keep the lights on. So we're very happy. This is another one, the Harriet Tubman Freedom Experience, right? On the back it says Experience the Journey, and a logo of our museum. And then the last one that's become very popular is a rendering of Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman is public domain. Anyone can take her picture and put it on a t-shirt. But it's fearless. She was absolutely fearless, absolutely intrepid. And so we're very happy to sell these t-shirts. So this is how we keep our doors open. Coupled with donations. We love donations. We love donations. The bigger the donation, the better the lecture.
I hear you.
If you can turn this way, here we have this mural that was done in 2002 by an elementary school with the guidance of their art teacher, and it chronicles Harriet Tubman's life, her life in working in Blackwater, trapping muskrat, through her first journey out in 1849 to freedom. The rendering, if you can, sometimes it's hard to distinguish, but these are freedom seekers going north.
Wow.
Yeah, following doing it at night. You see the moon, so that's that rendering. The middle is actually the size that Harriet Tubman was somewhere between 5'1" and 5'2". So this is a rendering of her actual size. This represents her as a free woman in Philadelphia. To the right of that, or to the left of that, depending on which way you're looking, is her service in the Civil War. She goes to South Carolina. She is beckoned, she is requested, if you will, by Abraham Lincoln to go fight in the Civil War to help those troops because of her knowledge of the land and her ability to lead people to freedom. And she never got caught. She made 13 trips. She was never caught, and she never lost anyone along those journeys. And the interesting thing, I went to South Carolina, and the marsh area looks very much like it does here. So that's why she was very familiar and able to navigate those areas. The red house in the back there, Harriet's first walk out in 1849. She goes at night, and she goes to Hannah Leverton's house. She's a Quaker woman in Caroline County. By the way, Caroline County had a large number of free African Americans because they worked the waterways. And they were very instrumental in helping the Underground Railroad. As I said, the Underground Railroad was a network of people, places, and codes. So Hannah Leverton.
Yeah, that's a great thing to talk about, because we look at the Underground Railroad and the perspectives out there as just this walking road, but we often don't talk about the maritime pieces of the Underground Railroad in isolation.
Absolutely, absolutely. My first walk in 2020, I walked with 7 other women, and we walked from the Brodus Plantation, where she was first enslaved, and to Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, to William Still's house.
Okay.
What we found on that journey, there are a ton of safe houses that have been restored where she, along with the other enslaved people seeking freedom, were able to stop and get food and rest. So it was an amazing network of people. The free African American men who worked the boats, they were useful in using the waterways. And then the Quakers would lend their homes. They had cutouts in their floors where the enslaved people could hide, often up in their roofs, the large barrels on the side of their house. They all lend them to as hiding places for those enslaved people. So it was very sophisticated and very covert. They were very committed to the freedom of enslaved people, so it was very secret. The authorities and the enslavers just couldn't smart enough. They weren't smart. So I was very happy. So I can say that I actually walked into the footsteps of my ancestors. I often say walking blood, sweat, brown, and that's very impactful. Because if you close your eyes and open your heart, I felt their presence. Yeah. Many people, I had some little kids coming and they were training on track. Now, Harriet Tubman did use in subsequent years, she used boats, trains, and horse-driven carriages. Another rendering, this is actually the original mold of that statue. Sculptor retired and he brought this to us recently. The rest of the museum are just, we have pictures. This is I forget the technique that he used. It's an ink, something with ink and pencil. That's a rendering that was given to us many years ago. Well, the interesting thing is people say we want to lend this to the museum, but they never come back. This portrait has been here for about 15 years, and if he comes back now, I'm not going to let him have it. I'm telling you the truth.
It's a mainstay.
I mean, yes, yeah. These are photographs that have been framed, and you know, they're public domain. This rendering is the last picture that we know taken of Harriet Tubman. She's in her 90s, and she's in her house in Albany, New York. This next one, this is a picture of the house that she purchased in 1859. She got money from William Seward. He was the Secretary of State under Abraham Lincoln. His wife and Harriet Tubman became very good friends, and they bought this house. So this is actually a picture of Harriet Tubman, her second husband, Nelson Davis. Oh. Nelson Davis is
He was a mystery man.
He was in his 40s when he died. Harriet Tubman was 22 years older than her husband.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little girl standing behind Nelson Davis. That's Gertie. They adopted Gertie. Harriet Tubman never had her own children. They adopted Gertie. And we don't know what happened to her.
That's the search.
Yeah, that's the search. Where's Gertie? Where's Davis's family? We just don't know enough about them. You know, she married John Tubman, but we don't talk about him so much anymore because she came back to get him and he had remarried. So he wouldn't be a direct bloodline. So if you're a Tubman, you are not related to Harriet Tubman.
That is such an interesting way to think about it. And a different approach when you all are searching for people, you got to search all those angles because that, you know, it would be obvious that anyone with the last name Tubman in Dorchester would be a direct, you know, descendant, you know, or even like direct relational line to Harriet Tubman. But guess what? You had to go back to the Rosses. So that's another, again, one of those techniques on the search.
Sure. And not all Rosses are related to Harriet Tubman. Do know that, you know, this was an institution of slavery. So the enslaved were given the last names, and it wasn't necessarily, Ben Ross would not be related to all the Rosses that are left here in the county. Next we have pictures of Harriet. These are all renderings of Harriet Tubman. Now, this is what they say she looked like in 1849. Well, in 1849, she's 25 years old. So she didn't look like that. I don't think. I think it's just an older picture. But this was at the Brodess plantation, and this is a picture that they had of Harriet Tubman. I don't believe that she looked that way when she was 25, 27 years old. Now here's another picture, and we have a little description under it. This is her, she was, the interesting thing, and many of you may or may not know, she worked in the Civil War, right? She led that raid at the Combahee River raid, and she was a nurse and cook. And here's this enslaved woman who decided to work for the very country who enslaved her. I mean, I'm not sure I could have done that, but she did with great honor. When she stopped, she was denied pension. But she was able to, through her entrepreneurial efforts. One thing I learned about Harriet Tubman when I was in South Carolina, she had what I would consider the original food truck.
Oh, wow.
Harriet Tubman was selling dinners and pies on Sundays to raise money for the efforts. And that's pretty cool stuff.
So think about like our cultural
Yeah.
reference as African Americans. For as long as I can remember, there was someone, that was not blood related but familial related. That's the way. That's how I got my cheer uniform.
Yeah, you sold dinners.
Absolutely.
And we look forward to those Sunday dinners.
Absolutely.
So Harriet Tubman was, she just, all the things that we know now, Harriet Tubman did. Things that we know now, our ancestors. Now she's they're saying Harriet Tubman is a nurse, a spy, and a scout. And the year on this picture is 1823. She dies March 10th, 1913. The next picture is a rendering of how she looked when she served in the Civil War in South Carolina. She was there for 3 years. And she worked in different capacities. And as I told you, she was the only African American that led a brigade in the raid on the Combahee River Trail. She worked with General Montgomery, and that was in 1863. Now, this next picture, to me, is a more flattering picture of Harriet Tubman. I mean, it depicts to me a very proud woman of accomplishment. And this is one of my favorite pictures of her. And this is her last, so Harriet Tubman, her journeys along the Underground Railroad started in 1849, ended in 1857, where she's finally able to rest, right? Mm-hmm. So this depicts to me a woman who's at peace with all of the amazing things that she's accomplished. So I like this one. Yeah. And the way she's dressed. This picture is another one. She's actually smiling. Most of the picture, she's not smiling, as if she doesn't have anything to smile about. Imagine being enslaved and finding freedom. I think I'd have a big grin on my face. So this is a picture of Harriet. Now, under it, it says, this is when Harriet was a small child. Brodus took her away to his own farm away in Bucktown Store and separated her from her brother, from Ben and young Harriet. But again, this is an older picture, and I think this is a picture of her as a free woman. So that's the end of our picture gallery. The rest of the museum is, again, these things have been donated to us. We have symbols of what life in slavery was like, the various things that were used on the plantations. So whiskey jug, butter, churn, coffee grinder.
I think in the Benson dig, they found, I think, a chip off of a whiskey jug. That was one of the artifacts that they recovered. I have a picture, I think, of that artifact.
Yes. We had them on display at the museum in March, the larger one. They have been, the archaeologists took them back. They're going to code them. They said they have a series of things they have to do, and then we will eventually get them. We'll get some, and the larger museum will get most of them.
Can you tell us a little bit about, because I know the pictures, there's one picture in particular that I have a question about.
Yep. So this is a picture board of places along the Underground Railroad that I actually walked by. These are roots along the way. This is actually close to our location. We're in downtown Cambridge. We're located on Ray Street, and we walk down Ray Street and go right. That's High Street, and High Street is where the Dorchester County Courthouse is. This is the original courthouse. It did burn in 1857, but Harriet Tubman's grandmother, along with many other enslaved people that were brought in from Long Wharf, from the slave ships, were marched down these streets, and in front of these doors, they were auctioned off to the highest bidder.
Wow.
But you had a question about one of the pictures.
The Uptown store.
which is one I had an opportunity to stand in front of it,
Oh my God.
and it was a moment for me
Absolutely.
as a researcher.
Absolutely. I have been inside of that store many times. Bucktown store. Harriet Tubman, and this is the scene of what they consider her most defiant moment. Harriet Tubman, what's unique about the enslaved people in Maryland is they were rented out. The enslavers, we didn't have in Maryland the big cash crops like tobacco and cotton and rice. They were planted here on a much smaller scale. So the enslavers made money by renting their slaves out and breeding them to sell them south. So Harriet Tubman is sent to the Bucktown store to get provisions. She's working actually not too far from the store. She goes into the store. While there, a slave boy is running from his enslaver. The enslaver calls out to Harriet to block him or grab him. Instead, Harriet Tubman blocks him. The enslaver picks up a 2-pound weight that's inside of the store, hurls it at the little boy, hits Harriet Tubman in the head. She falls out and ends up sustaining life injury. David, she's hit in the head. She's taken back to the Brodus plantation, but made to get up the next day and work. Now, a couple of things happen at this Bucktown store. Harriet Tubman, I didn't have use of a comb, and she didn't get to comb her hair until she was much older, probably in her 20s, maybe 19 or 20. So she had the benefit of her hair being in bushy form, and then she had a wrap around her hair. She always, whenever she'd go out, she'd always want to tie down her hair. She'd say, I want to be presentable. I want to tie down my hair. So we have the flaxseed here that's grown in Cambridge. And so the cloth woven from this flaxseed is the kind of cloth that she had around her head. So it's believed that because her hair was in its natural state and she had this turban, if you will, wrapped around it, it blunted, if you will, the hit from that 2-pound weight, which ordinarily would have killed her. So she sustained this injury to her head. And later on, as she got older, she developed what we now call present-day epilepsy, narcolepsy. But Harriet Tubman would frequently, while working in the fields, fall out. And during these moments of this episode, if you will, is where she started having the visions. And she started having visions about what it would be like to be free. And we believe that this is what set her on this trajectory to find freedom. Her faith was strong, and she believed that it was a crime to enslave other people. And coupled with the fact that she was treated very harshly from a little girl, she sustained beatings as young as 5 years old. She was defiant and just didn't understand why she would have to deal with these kinds of beatings, and was just defiant. But defiance is good. So the Bucktown store is there. That's the original store. It is still owned by the Meredith family.
Yes, that was one of the most impressive kind of pieces.
Yes.
And I didn't have an opportunity to go in. Is that story accounted for?
Yes.
Okay, inside the store. Because that's what I heard. I just wanted to verify
it. It's inside the store. And the interesting thing, the Meredith family takes great pride. They understand the story. And when you go in there, I got to call them first. They will give you they give you the story. And Susan Meredith is very animated, so you
Wonderful.
really get a good history. So if you ever want to come back, I can get you in the story. I got a little power here.
And I guess let's get the marker.
The marker. So this marker is on the location of the Broadest plantation. The house is no longer there. But again, if you call me up, I can walk you all the way back to the woods. We have to get permission to do that.
Okay.
But this is where she was first enslaved. Now that we know about Ben Ross's house in Madison, which from this location is about 10 miles, we've got to find out if Harriet Tubman was born at that cabin or if she was born here.
On the Broadest plantation.
Broadest
So
plantation.
again, if you think about the complexity of Harriet Tubman as a critical character in American history, the search continues.
The search continues because what you should understand, there were two plantations involved with the Ross family enslavement. The Broadus plantation, the Thompson's plantation. The widow Broadus married a Thompson. So Ben Ross was on the Thompson's plantation and Harriet's mother was on the Broadus plantation. So they were always kind of back and forth between these two plantations. So and the distance between them, the Broadus plantation is in Dorchester County. The Thompson's plantation is in Caroline County. The distance between the two is about 25 to 30 miles. So they were going back and forth between the two. When Harriet Tubman was 8 years old, she was in fact rented out to Mrs. Thompson when she had her first child. So this is why they knew the land so well, is because they traveled it. And then Ben Ross was a foreman, if you will, over the enslaved and free African-American men who built the boats. So they had just vast knowledge of the land, the trees, and the environment. And that's why the Underground Railroad was so successful here in Maryland.
And I see there's a number of churches. Can you talk a little bit about their role in the story?
So the enslaved people, the Methodist Church was a very powerful institution in not just here in Maryland, but as I do my travels, I'm noticing that all of the churches affiliated with any enslaved people were Methodist churches. So these are just various churches that Harriet Tubman, not so much her, but her family and those as they became free eventually attended. Yeah, the Methodist churches.
And then the Staley Institute. Can you give us a little bit of
Absolutely.
information? It's one part of the story that isn't told a whole lot.
Sure. Now, the Stanley Institute is not necessarily a part of the Harriet Tubman story. The Stanley Institute sits on Route 16. Route 16 is also known as the Highway to Freedom.
Yeah.
And it is called that because during the exodus, if you will, of those finding freedom, because of the proximity of the plantations at the time, they would have walked down Route 16. So the Stanley Institute is the first African-American school, one-room school for grades, I'll say kindergarten through high school. They may have been called something different during that period, where African-Americans were taught. This was their school. So it was moved to this location. I'm not sure where it was originally, but they decided to sit it on Route 16.
On Route 16.
Across from the Stanley Institute is the church, Christ Rock Church. This area is called Christ Rock, excuse me. And between the church and the school is where the families went to worship, and then the school children were taught. So again, not part of Harriet Tubman's story, but certainly part of the story after those that were enslaved found freedom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, as a researcher and historian, how important is place for you and location? Because we talked a bit even before we began going live about what places do for research and the ways that it deepens knowledge. Can you talk to them about that?
Oh my gosh, we can Google and we can look in books all day long, but I tell you the real history is in the location. And for me, and maybe I'm slightly clairvoyant, I don't know, but when I go to these locations, I actually, if you can believe it, I can hear the stories. So I think as a researcher, if this is what you're interested in, got to come to these locations. It changes the landscape of how you feel and then are later able to write about the stories. It's crucial that you come.
Yeah, and I
Come
definitely
here.
think place
Yeah.
is so important for
Yeah.
children because, I mean, how do we cultivate archaeologists? And when you think about archaeology, you
Exactly.
think of like like I
Exactly.
was think of dinosaurs as the pathway to think about archaeology when
Right.
in fact all of this archaeology, anthropology,
It's
the
all-
study of,
yes.
of
It's-
ecosystems.
Yes, it's here. I mean, for me, when I went to that dig and saw how they can go into the ground and they've got this little sifter, if you will, they put dirt on, they sift down and they find these artifacts. It just blows your mind that these were people who were here before us and this is the stuff that's left behind. So these are the things once pieced together give you the real story. I take children on walks along the Underground Railroad. I had 2 school groups last week. And I can't tell you how their eyes got so big
Wow.
when I'm pointing out that this is where Harriet Tubman was. You can't get that from a book. You can't get that sitting inside of a classroom. So I know those kids are impacted, and now I think I've piqued, if you will, their interest in wanting to learn a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And places, again,
Yeah.
place is a huge part. And we have a lot of teachers that are from around the country. Can you talk to us about the types of people that visit? Is it just Marylanders or?
No, people come from all over the world. It astounds me. As I said, we're open 3 days a week for 3 hours. 3 hours Thursday, Friday, Saturday for 4 hours. They come from all over the world. Harriet Tubman is international, and they find this little museum. You see, we're not big. We're a little museum. And they're interested in Harriet Tubman. They're interested in the institution of slavery that, for reasons our government wants to write out. And they're interested in her story and her quest for freedom and the fact that we are all still in quest for freedom.
Mm.
And the people that come here, they know about her as a slave, but they don't all know all of the amazing things she did after she was free. And that's what they want to know.
In this brick rendering here, where is this located?
Now this is the Harriet Tubman Garden. It's right off of Route 50. Right, Route 50 is behind us. It's right across from Food Lion. Why it's placed there, I don't know. It's small. It's just a little place. I don't even think there's a bench to sit. But it's the first memorial here in Cambridge to
Wow.
Harriet Tubman. So if you go into the Food Lion, you walk out and Harriet Tubman's right there looking at you.
Wonderful.
Okay? Yeah.
So that picture definitely struck me. I'm like,
Yeah.
I've actually not been right here
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then the other thing, 50 was the way to get out of here. It's called Route 50 now. So I think it's called Gateway Road or something. But that's the way I walked. I had to walk on Route 50.
Wow.
Route 301, 404, 313. Those are major ways. You know, the cars are speeding by me, but that's how she had to walk. They weren't these roads then, but walk to get to Delaware and on up to Philadelphia, on to Pennsylvania. So yeah, rings of Harriet Tubman. You see that, this one, there's a little brightness in her eyes. But she wasn't always wrinkled up like that. Now, she had a hard life, to be sure. She dealt with beatings, food deprivation, all kinds of things. But I still think that these renderings are not a good depiction of.
And that's, again, an additional
Yeah.
challenge on the
Yeah.
search. And
Yeah.
I think we talked a little bit as a collective group, where are those items that memorialize?
Let me show you. We have these trading cards, if you will. And I'm going to give you a set.
Oh, yay.
Now, here is a rendering. I don't know if you can see it. This is what they think Harriet Tubman might have looked like as a young woman.
Wow.
Now, this makes sense to me, right? Doesn't this look like any of our daughters?
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate this. I don't know who drew it. The back doesn't say. It just says, I'll read it. Called Minty. Now, Minty, maybe it's all in the name. Maybe Harriet is an old name. Maybe
oh, wow.
Maybe it makes you think this is an old woman. But Minty's kind of young, hip name, right? So this is an artist rendering, whether it's true or not, but maybe it's all in the name. Maybe it's all in the Maybe Araminta, all of the renderings are, say, Harriet. Maybe if we saw more Araminta, we might see a younger version.
Yeah.
But I like this one a lot.
And all 8 of the women that we studied in this project, this first go round of the project, they all had, they say surnames, I say her names.
Yeah, yes.
In multiple ways that they've shown up in our nation's history.
Yeah.
And just, it speaks to just the legacy of a multifaceted life. And Harriet, I think, definitely exemplifies that.
Absolutely. I don't know any other, and I certainly need to read more, but I don't know any other figure like Harriet Tubman in history who did the things that she did. Man or woman, I just don't know. So she's my superhero. I understand, I read online that there's a game, so she's actually going to be a superhero figure.
Oh, wonderful.
There's an African-American woman who is creating this game, which I'm very excited about. We actually have a Harriet Tubman board game. Are you aware? Let me show you the board game. A visitor from DC who went to Howard, he said, do you know about the Harriet Tubman board game? So I bought it. It's expensive. Let's see, did they move it? It's a board game, and you open it up like Monopoly. You can get them online. Amazon sells them, but they're limited edition. And they've got Harriet Tubman, and they've got an enslaver and a dog, and they're pieces. I'm going to see if I can find it. And you just move her along the Underground Railroad. So it's quite creative. I don't know who moved it. But yeah, this is our museum. What you get here mostly, though, because we don't have all of the lovely artifacts and the exhibits that the larger museum has, what you get here is the stories. We tell the stories, we sing songs, and when we get children's groups here, we do a lot of role playing. We try to make it as interactive as possible. We try to put you in the mindset of what it would have been like in 1852, 1855 to be an enslaved person, and then finding freedom. So there's a happy ending to our story.
Yep, wonderful. Thank you for the tour. I guess now at this time, you all can start flooding the questions that you have. I saw a couple comments popping up on the screen as we were walking around. We definitely can, start fielding questions. So whenever you're ready, I see a couple things, in the chat. Okay. What are your questions? What questions do you have for Ms. Harris, our resident historian, who actually, she studies a lot of things. So even this idea of the search, you can ask Ms. Harris questions. She's been a lot of places, actually had my stomach flipping this morning talking about one of her latest adventures, just in the space of the search. So ask your questions and we will answer them.
Yes, absolutely.
I guess we can sit down. Yeah. I see him popping up. This question's from Victoria. My eyeballs, I have on my driving glasses, not my reading glasses. So I know a portion of Harriet's route on the Underground Railroad is open to walk. How far does it go?
Oh my gosh, so the tour, and I walked, as I told you, I walked from the Brothers Plantation in Cambridge, Maryland, to William Steele's house on South Street in Philadelphia.
Wow.
So the walking tour, there's a driving tour that we have outlined in one of our driving tour guides, and we have a map that you can download it from the website. But it's the total distance is 156 miles, and I walked every inch of it.
Wonderful.
And there's sites along the way that you can see.
Okay, so let me read that. Okay, so one of our scholars said she, took offense with the term freedom seeker for the description of Harriet with her emancipated enslavement pass in the Federal Museum. She just had questions about I guess possibly the terms that you use, and what are those things that you frequently see that you're like, let me ask some questions.
Well, we're in this politically correct environment. So I've had historians come from various institutions of higher learning. No, Linda, don't say slave, say enslaved. She was a freedom seeker. She wasn't running for freedom. So we want people to feel inclusive. We don't want to offend anyone, because what's most important is that we get out the story of Harriet Tubman and her greatness. So I don't really have a problem using freedom seeker. I don't have a problem using enslaver and enslaved, if that's going to get people in the museum to understand the story. Because as I said, I want the story to be told in the true story. So I do take offense. I mean, I like to call it what it is, but we're being censored in this country. What can I tell you?
Yeah.
So we got to work around it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Someone asked a question: how do we schedule the tour of the farm/plantation?
Wonderful. So on our website, and our website is harriettubmanmuseumcenter.org. You'll go on there, you'll see a lovely flyer. We have two kinds of tours. We have a walking tour, and we have a horse and buggy tour.
Oh, wow.
If you cannot walk the distance, you can reserve those walks. You can also call us if a 50-mile walk or a 20-mile walk is too long for you. I will tailor walks to fit your abilities, because what's most important to me is that you experience it. So you can call us. Can I give the number?
Yes, you absolutely can.
410-228-1. Oh, let me make sure I'm giving you the right number. Sorry. Get my card here. It's 410-228-0401. Call and ask for Linda Harris, and I would love nothing more than to tailor a walking tour for you. I find that people leave feeling much better and engaging more and wanting to know the story of Harriet Tubman.
Wonderful. The next question is, are there any primary sources in existence from Harriet herself? So in writings, renderings?
Okay, well, Harriet Tubman never learned to read or write. So anything that you find that references her in writing would have been written by someone else. And so to answer your question, we are not aware of them. As I said, we have an active dig that we found the foundation of Ben Ross's house. We're not sure that Harriet Tubman was born there. We're not sure that Harriet Tubman lived there, because the house was found at the Stewart's Canal, and it could have been after she left. So these things are where we're finding out. But no, I don't think there's anything that you'll find that has any writings from her, because she never learned to write.
Thank you, thank you. So the next question is from Nick, and he said, you were just referenced in the New York Times article by Martha S. Jones, chronologizing your journey retraction, I think my other glasses, your journey retracting the 116 miles that comprise, look at me, I can't even read, that comprise Tubman's Trail. Can you share a bit about your key takeaways as I go get my other glasses?
Sure. It was hard. I have such an appreciation for Harriet Tubman and what she was able to accomplish. Now, we didn't have dogs chasing us or guns, but I felt the spirit of Harriet Tubman and those who walked that Underground Railroad, and it changed my life forever. And I wasn't a historian. For 35 years, I had my own real estate company. I was trying to make money. But now I simply want to know who I am, and my walks in search for Harriet Tubman is helping me find that out.
Thank you, thank you. Any other questions? I think that was Any other questions while we have Ms. Harris here? I guess I might have one. When you walked, because I know you talked about the importance of place and space and the clairvoyant feeling that you got, what was one of those places where you're like, oh my gosh, this spot right here changed me as a person?
The Thompson's Plantation. In 1854, Harriet Tubman comes back to get her brothers. So the Thompson's Plantation is, part of it is owned by two African-American women who have an organic farm. And everybody, if you're listening to this, please come. I would love to take you on a tour of that farm. The other part is privately owned, and I snuck on that. Plantation, which I don't encourage anyone to do. Don't do what I do. But I saw the corn crib where she and her brothers hid before she came to get them.
Wow.
And I fell to my knees and I cried because I was there where they were. And that impacted me in such an incredible way. I don't think anyone will get to see it because the owners got wind that I was there and they called me up and they said, don't ever come back here again.
No.
Because, these people have purchased the property and it's their home now, but that was something. Also on that plantation is the witness tree. It's a 200-plus-year-old tree that I go there often and take tours. And when I touch that tree, remember the tree was there when Harriet Tubman was there, and imagine what that tree has witnessed. So when I touch that tree, I feel the energy of those that were there before me. So those are the two most impactful moments along my initial walk.
Wonderful. So Stephanie says, thank you for the tour. It was wonderful. Are you able to conduct a virtual experience like this for elementary age students? So our teachers from are around the country.
Indeed. Technology would permit it, and we have done it, and we would love to do it. We would love to do it. In fact, I could probably create a virtual experience on a walk. I would love to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Any other questions? So I'm going to give you a little secret. So behind the camera is my daughter. She has been our traveling film person, and a part of our crew. Logan, do you have a question that you can ask or you want to ask? She's shy because I just put her on camera. I'll let you think about your question because I know you've been tapping me through the whole tour. So Deirdre asked, Harriet was beaten to almost death as she was sold out of the plantation around the age of 6. Returned to be with her mother to be nursed. This brought me to tears for enslaved children. How do we share, I think, these perspectives with young children? What has been,
Well,
a technique that you use?
it's interesting. 2 little girls came into the museum and they had their little dolls, and they were the least bit interested in what I was talking about. So I asked them their ages. They were 6 and 8, and I told them that story. She was beaten by the Thompson's wife, Elizabeth Thompson, and she was beaten because her job was to keep the woman's baby quiet, right? So these women didn't keep their children. Harriet had to sleep with the baby and keep the baby quiet. When the baby was crying, disturbing her mother, they beat her. And they beat her so badly, and they said, you're useless, and they sent her back to the Brothers Plantation. So I told these 2 little girls, they're frolicking around, not paying any attention. And I said, you got your little doll. I said, Harriet Tubman had no doll. And I said, I told them a story about her having to take care of a baby while she was a baby herself. I said, could you take care of a baby? Only this baby doll. I said, she was beaten. The one little girl dropped the doll, and she apologized. So the way I try to, and I don't want to frighten little children because it's a very frightening thing, but I tell them from the perspective of privilege, that it is a privilege for you to play with a doll rather than be beaten and have to take care of a little baby. So I just tell them the truth. This is a condition of slavery. It's an institution that was a horrific institution, and you need to know about it. And I just, try to relate it in those terms.
Absolutely. My mother said to me when I asked questions as a young person, like, I want you to know that the boogeyman is real.
Yes.
And she framed it in that way. Like I'd had,
Yes.
these thoughts about oh gosh, the boogeyman's gonna jump out
Yes.
to me until the day she sat me down and said, the boogeyman is real. And then she was able to have a conversation with me about chattel slavery as well as Native Indigenous capture as children that were captured
Yes.
during
Yes.
the founding of our nation.
One of the things I recently went to Mississippi, Memphis first, and I went to the Slave Museum, and I did not know, and I'm going to read more about it, that the babies, the young children, were used as foot warmers. I didn't know about that. We get our little foot warmers in the store, but these babies were put at the foot of the stinky feet of the enslavers to warm their feet at night. That's another thing that brought me to tears. And it's a fact that I didn't know. So there's so much, we dealt with so much horror. And we need to know about it. The children need to know about it so that they'll understand. And we don't need to sugarcoat it. Let's tell it like it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Next question is, what good book can you suggest about Harriet Tubman? And do you think aspects of history are left out or whitewashed when the National Park Service takes over historical sites?
Well, yes. So a good book, and the writer is a friend of mine, Kate Larson, Kate Clifford Larson, did a magnificent job, in my opinion, of chronicling Harriet Tubman's story, because she came down here and she spent several years. So I go to that all the time. There have been many. We've got several books in our bookcase. There is a professor at Rutgers. Oh gosh, she's written. She came to slay.
Mm-hmm. Oh, is it Margaret?
It's
I think you all saw her.
And in fact,
I have the book.
I've asked her. We're looking it up the name, and forgive me for forgetting.
I hope you all have. She Came to Slay. That's a great.
It's a great. It's
book.
More of a. It's a children. I mean, a young person can read it and not be frightened by any of it.
And it's on Audible also.
It's
so
on Audible
it's a
too.
Simon & Schuster
Yeah.
production.
Let's find it.
Where is it?
African American woman wrote it. As a matter of fact, I found her through Kate.
Oh, Dunbar.
Erica Dunbar.
Yep.
Erica Dunbar.
Oh, they're going to hear from Dunbar. This week. She's in the supplementary sources
Okay, good.
in a video. So you'll hear from
I
Dunbar.
would recommend her book. Most of the books written about Harriet Tubman were not written by African American folks. We have historical fiction. We have Ta-Nehisi Coates. We have Colson Whitehead. But the majority of them, unfortunately, are written by non-African American people. So we need to do more.
Yes. Yep. In Dunbar right now, we contacted her for the project. We did hear from her.
Yeah.
She is not only researching, she's on the search right along with us. So we are in the same wave as Erica Armstrong Dunbar when we're searching for Bowser, as well as she wrote the book on Ona. So 3 of the women that we are covering, she's currently on the search, and that's kind of why we couldn't get her on this project, because she's so busy.
She's very, very busy. And the only reason I got it is because Kate Larson told, she said, Linda's a friend of mine, and I was able to talk with her. So she's very busy, and we're very, and she's so dynamic.
Yes, she is.
She's amazing.
You'll hear the thread, because Linda knows Erica Dunbar, and then another researcher that we're going to talk to is really good friends, because again, as historians and as Black women researchers, we're connected in ways that we don't know. And most of us are on the search in the very same way. So next question is, I was surprised that the African American Civil War Museum in DC doesn't have anything highlighting Harriet's work as a spy. Are there any Civil War museums that highlight, her contributions as a spy?
Yes. Well, first of all, I was so disappointed in the African American Museum. That one little thing they have there just made me so angry. Go to Beaufort, South Carolina. They are in fact raising money for this magnificent statue of Harriet Tubman's service in the Civil War. Now, there is a minister there, I think his name is Reverend Clark, and I made a connection. I told him I'm going to come back down there. He is working on, he's got this fabulous little bookstore / art gallery. He's got so much Harriet Tubman stuff there, which will eventually become the museum, but he needs money like everyone else. But he has done a magnificent job. He's got lots of documents about her service in the Civil War. So go to Beaufort, South Carolina, look up Reverend Clark. He is the minister of I think it's the United Tabernacle Church in South Carolina in Beaufort.
Yeah, and when I was looking through the archives and reading different things, a lot of the accounts of who she was and what she did were told in the masculine
Yes.
sense.
Yes.
So you got to really ask questions
Yes,
on that particular search. So she was identified as a male.
Yes, right.
In a lot of the historical writings that I reviewed. Again,
Yes.
this idea that the search is a haunting, that is one of the things that kept me up at night and I'm like, oh gosh, like, am I missing anything?
Certainly.
Based on just the ways in which people are gendered in academic literature.
Absolutely, and the fact that how could a woman 5'2", I don't know how much she weighed, probably 110 pounds, possibly do these things? She would have had to have been a man. So there's that, that sexism piece in there as well.
Okay, next question is, at what point in her career was she doing this, and how often did she improvise or have a scribe or from her memory? Like what point in her career was she, telling her story?
Well, so Sarah Bradford writes, she interviews Harriet Tubman, and it's all dictated, and she writes a couple of books for the purposes of raising money to fund the Underground Railroad. Harriet Tubman, again, did read or write. So she wouldn't have been able to document anything. As far as I know, Sarah Bradford is the only one that interviewed her to document her story. Her career later on, after the emancipation of the enslaved people, and then working in Auburn, New York, there may be more documentation there, but I'm not aware of it. There may have been more interviews. I'm simply not aware of that.
Yep. In terms of technology preparation, we can only take one more question, but I promise to capture the questions that remain and ask Ms. Harris her perspective on those questions. So I guess, Kendra, can you give me your final question? Got that one. Was it one after? Let's see.
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay, perfect. So it looks like we covered all the questions. So Ms. Harris, any final thoughts for our educators as they go on the search for founding Black mothers for themselves, for their classrooms, and really to add to this repository of information for the nation to reference? Any closing thoughts?
Well, as I said, Harriet Tubman is a superhero, and we can study her life and get just about everything we need to succeed, of the virtues that she lived by, the courage, the tenacity. Let's teach that. When young kids come here, we know that she was enslaved. Let's talk about the things that she did after slavery. Here's a woman that was enslaved 25 years of her life and went on to do some amazing things. Let's focus on that. Focus on community, humanity, networking, politics. We need to be involved in politics to affect change in our communities. Love for family, faith. Focus on those things. Any one of those categories you can assign to Harriet Tubman. So depending on whatever category you want to teach, any particular month or day, pull Harriet Tubman out, and her name will come up under any one of those. So teach it that way, and it will stick. It changed me. I am a senior citizen, and my thirst for growing and learning started with Harriet Tubman. At this point in my life, starts with Harriet Tubman. She gives me everything I need to succeed.
Yes. So on behalf of our institute and our scholars, we really want to sincerely thank you. You know I love you. And I'm sure that their experiences will be enriched just being able to share time and space with someone like you. So I always want to acknowledge the brilliance and just the person that you are. And I'm sure they will be here, those of us that are local, as well as those of us who live a distance, to visit you and really tap into Ms. Linda Harris as a resource for the search.
And if I could just say, just call me, I will tailor a walk just for you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ms. Harris.
Thank you.
We loved our time.